following is a Galactic Digital Studios production. This is Sports Central, part of the Closing Tag Network. Wow! I didn't see that coming at all. No, I'm not being facetious. Not at all. No. Here, hold on. Let me get my shocked face. 1 second. Shocked face. This is Sports Central, part of the Closing Tag Network. You're probably wondering what I'm talking about. Well, let me explain. News came down earlier today from ESPN that Los Angeles Lakers head coach Darvin Ham has been fired. Wow, who could have seen that coming besides everybody? I'm sure even Darvin Ham saw that coming. He probably had his bags packed and was on the first bus out of LA by the time the news hit. Yeah. And making things even worse, apparently, according to reports, LeBron James has already been discussing the now vacant Lakers head coaching position to Rajon Rondo and JJ Redick. Now, stop me if you've heard this before. Neither one of those guys has any head coaching experience whatsoever. This'll go over great. Yeah. Just fantastic. LeBron doing LeBron things. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. The sky is blue. Water is wet in its liquid form. Yeah, tell me something I don't know. But enough about LeBron. I don't want to make this whole podcast about LeBron James and give people the wrong impression. I want to actually celebrate players that are actually doing something these days. So, let's focus on that. The first round of the NBA playoffs, in all likelihood by the time this podcast drops, will have concluded. 6 of the 8 series has already finished up. Moving on to the next round of the NBA playoffs are the following. In the Western Conference, you have the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Denver Nuggets, the defending champions, and the Minnesota Timberwolves. In the Eastern Conference, you have the Boston Celtics, the New York Knicks, and the Indiana Pacers. That's right, the Pacers beat the Milwaukee Bucks. Doc Rivers didn't wait for the team to go up 3-1 to choke this time. I got more thoughts about Doc Rivers, but I'll save those for another time. And how Giannis Antetokounmpo has completely fucked that entire organization over. Thanks, Greek. The only 2 series that are left, and the Game 6s play tonight, as I'm recording, are the Cleveland Cavaliers and Orlando Magic, and the Dallas Mavericks versus the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, even though those series are not yet concluded, I will give you my thoughts and my predictions on who I think is going to move on to their respective conference finals. You ready? Okay. In the West, you're going to have Oklahoma City going up against the winner of the Clippers and Mavericks. Considering Luka Doncic is hurt right now, I mean, he's still playing, but he's not in a good way. He's struggling. He's fighting through injury. And yeah, it's not a pretty sight. But Dallas is up 3-2, so you can't really complain too much. That said, I don't care how much championship or playoff experience Kyrie Irving has, and this is not, Kyrie Irving hating Raul coming out. This is me being realistic coming out. I don't see Dallas or the Clippers beating the Thunder in a 7-game series. I just don't. Oklahoma City's got too much depth, too much firepower, too much defense, too much. Oklahoma City's going to take that one in 6 games, I think. The Denver Nuggets will be facing the Minnesota Timberwolves. I am looking forward to this one. This is going to be a fun series to watch. On one hand, you've got the defending NBA champions, the Denver Nuggets. Nikola Jokic, who by all accounts should be the league MVP this year. Jamal Murray, who has proven himself again in the playoffs to be an absolute beast at the point guard position. And Aaron Gordon, who is just a monster on the interior. On the other hand, you've got the Minnesota Timberwolves, probably the hottest young team in the league right now. Anthony Edwards may very well be the next face of the NBA. And I know a lot of pundits and a lot of talking heads are saying that right now. But as a basketball fan, as someone that has lived through the Larry Bird and Magic Johnson era, that has lived through the Michael Jordan era, that has lived through the Kobe Bryant era, that has lived, regrettably, through the LeBron James era. Anthony Edwards is him. His teammates are not too bad either. You've got the guy that just won the 6th Man of the Year award, Naz Reid, who's going to provide a really good spark off the bench. You've got Karl Anthony Towns, a former All-Star, who is very similar to Jokic and will match up against him very nicely. And one of my personal favorite players in the league right now, Rudy Gobert, who Jazz fans very well remember. And defensively, I think Gobert is going to match up against Jokic while Karl Anthony Towns handles Aaron Gordon. I think that's going to be an excellent matchup. It's going to be tough. It's going to come right down to the wire every single game. But, and I know this is going to shock some people, I've actually got Minnesota winning this one in 7 games. Again, these games are going to be very tough, very close, very fiercely competitive. And how is this for a stat? For all the Jazz fans that were saying that all the guys that were on the Jazz before, guys like Gordon Hayward, Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, they'll never make it past the second round. The Jazz will make it past the second round before these guys do. Well, guess what? The Jazz are not even in the playoffs this year. And guess who's probably going to be in the Western Conference Finals on other teams? That's right. Rudy Gobert on the Timberwolves and Gordon Hayward on the Oklahoma City Thunder. So yeah, there's that. In the East, you've got Boston waiting on the winner of Cleveland versus Orlando. I want to say Donovan Mitchell's got this. I do. I can't. Boston in 5. Sorry. Regardless of who. Well, if Cleveland wins, it's Boston in 5. If Orlando wins, it's Boston in 4. If we're just being brutally honest here. And then you've got the Indiana Pacers and the New York Knicks, a good old-fashioned rivalry in the playoffs. Stop me if you've heard that before. Indiana versus New York in the playoffs. Visions of Reggie Miller versus Spike Lee dancing in my head right now. Except we don't have Reggie Miller anymore. We barely have Spike Lee anymore. But what we do have is two fiercely competitive defensive teams that are just itching to punch you in the face and laugh at you while you're on the ground. I love good, tough, competitive defense, and both the Pacers and the Knicks provide it in spades. And the one matchup that I'm looking forward to more, well, almost as much, I should say, as the Denver-Minnesota matchup is this one. And it comes down to two players. It's going to come down to Tyrese Halliburton for the Pacers, who kind of got robbed for most improved player, but yeah, Tyrese Maxey earned it. Congratulations, Tyrese. You good. You good. And Jalen Brunson for the Knicks. Those two are going to just tear into each other. It's going to be good. It's going to be competitive. And I've got Indiana, shockingly enough, in 7. I just don't know if I buy Tom Thibodeau as a coach that can coach a team to the conference finals. I just don't. But, whatever. But if you'll notice a pattern with these playoff teams that are remaining, Boston aside, if you've noticed a pattern with a lot of these playoff teams, Oklahoma City, Denver, Minnesota, Dallas, we'll put the Clippers off to the side as well. Boston, Boston's off to the side, but Cleveland, Orlando, New York, Indiana. What is the one common denominator on all those teams? Not a single super team, quote unquote, to be found. Every single one of those teams was built through drafting and trading. Not a single one of them was built through, hey, let's take 2 or 3 of the top stars in the league and just mesh them together and let's hope it works. I've mentioned in the past, I don't remember if it was in podcast form or blog form. I'll have to double check, but there's a right way and a wrong way to build a super team. The Chicago Bulls back in the 90s had the right way. The Boston Celtics back in the 80s, along with the Lakers in that same era, had it the right way. The Lakers in 2004 didn't have it the right way. I mean, it worked for a little while until they ran into Detroit and proceeded to get their butts kicked. But if you notice, a lot of these super teams that were constructed over the past 2 years have completely failed. Let's put aside the fact that the Lakers actually won an NBA championship 4 years ago while the entire world is on lockdown. Let's put that aside for 2 seconds. What have the Lakers done since LeBron showed up? Not counting that championship. What have they done? Aside from getting swept in the conference finals by the Denver Nuggets, nothing. Half the time, they don't even make the playoffs. Okay. I'll give you this. They won the in-season tournament, or as I like to call it, the consolation prize. What have the Phoenix Suns done in the last 2 years? Hell, what have they done in the last 10 years? Has Devin Booker really proven himself or done anything to prove himself to be the guy that leads his team to a championship? I'll give you the short answer, no. Has Kevin Durant done anything to prove that he can be a leader on a championship team outside of Golden State? The short answer to that, again, is no. How well did that experiment in Milwaukee work? They couldn't even keep a good head coach around for more than 40 games. They ended up firing Budenholzer before even trading for Damian Lillard. They ended up firing Adrian Griffin halfway through the season, just in time for Doc Rivers to backdoor his way to being the coach in the All-Star game. And Doc Rivers, predictably, choked again in the playoffs when it mattered most. That super team has failed. Every super team outside of the 2020 Los Angeles Lakers, and that was a fluke, and they've proven it time and time again. Every single other super team within the last 10 years, no, scratch that, 7 years. I don't want to discredit the Golden State Warriors. Every other super team has failed. The super team era, rightfully so, is now dead. And there's a reason why it's dead. There's a reason why teams like the Lakers, like the Suns, like the Brooklyn Nets, like Milwaukee should stop this insanity now. Especially considering the NBA is going to be expanding in 3 years. I'll get to that here in a minute. The NBA's super team model is failing because of the simple fact that in the long run, when you're considering a very grueling 82-game season, oh, by the way, the Clippers failed too. I don't care what happens in this series against Dallas, that team has failed. But in the long run, in the course of an 82-game schedule, you need dependable players that are going to actually show up for work. Guys like Kawhi Leonard and Kevin Durant and Ben Simmons and Damian Lillard, with all due respect to Damian Lillard, they don't show up when it matters most. And the fact is that if you don't have your star players that you've traded the entire farm for showing up for when it matters most, you're dead in the water. That's not supposition. That's not fan fiction. That's not talking heads spouting off bullshit on ESPN. That is cold, hard fact. If you don't have guys like Kawhi Leonard showing up in playoff games, your team is dead. You have no chance. If you have guys like LeBron James that are throwing teammates and coaches under the bus at will, to the point where the coach just got fired earlier today, your team is not going to accomplish much of anything. If you have one of your top 3 players that you traded practically your entire bench depth for, putting up goose eggs in playoff games, no names mentioned, Bradley Beal, your team is going to fail in the playoffs. And look what happened to the Suns. If you have two of your top stars basically go down with injuries at the same time, and you have no bench depth to speak of, it's a miracle you got out of there alive. Regardless of who the coach is. And with all due respect to Giannis, I have a ton of respect for Giannis Antetokounmpo. But he brought this upon himself. He has become the self-fulfilling prophecy. He made it perfectly clear to the Milwaukee Bucks that he wanted complete and total control of the team to make sure that he made it to the playoffs and that he made it to the NBA Finals again so that he could go get ring number 2. So what did he do? He fired Mike Budenholzer as the head coach. He orchestrated the trade for Damian Lillard when Miami was basically like, yeah, we're not giving up Tyler Hero for Damian Lillard on top of other players. And then when the defense wasn't good enough, he fired Adrian Griffin, or he got Adrian Griffin fired, and decided to bring in his buddy Doc Rivers. And look where that got them. How many times on this podcast was I doing Doc Watch and basically counting the amount of games that Doc Rivers was losing as the new head coach? The Milwaukee Bucks, keep in mind, at one point in time, and this is laughable now, looking back, but the Milwaukee Bucks were a dark horse favorite to win the Eastern Conference this year at one point. At one point, they were the number 2 team in the Eastern Conference behind Boston. When Doc Rivers took over, they went all the way down to 5th before they rebounded barely to get the 3 seed. Doc Rivers has done more harm to that organization and to every organization that he has ever touched than he did good. And to be perfectly frank, so has Giannis. This is not on Damian Lillard. This is not on Chris Middleton. This is not on Patrick Beverley, who, by the way, is a complete moron for throwing a basketball at a fan during the blowout loss. I get tensions were high and I get emotions were running high, but you don't go throwing basketballs at fans. That's just... Did we not learn anything from the Malice at the Palace? Nothing. And then came news earlier this week, and this is kind of why I was discussing about expansion. The one belief, I guess you could say, throughout the league has been expansion is practically inevitable at this point. It's imminent. It's coming. The only thing that was holding it back was the TV rights deal negotiations. Those negotiations seem to be all but done. The NBA has announced that they are staying on ESPN and ABC through the next, I think it was like 7 years, but that a good portion of their games will now be streamed live on Amazon Prime Video starting in the 2025-2026 season. So October 2025. That's huge. And the NBA just got a ton of money from Amazon and from ESPN for that negotiation, for the rights deal. Now, there's a certain section of games that still need to be resolved. There is talk of TNT still being in the mix And if they're still in the mix, then obviously inside the NBA is still going to be sticking around. But a surprising contender just showed up very recently in these negotiations. NBC. Yes, NBC could once again, for the first time in 20 years, televise NBA games on their stations. And if you don't think for 1 second I am eagerly anticipating the return of Round Ball Rock, that iconic NBA on NBC opening theme, you don't know me very well. Sorry for the creepy laugh. I miss that theme. I go on YouTube and look up that theme practically every week. I love that theme. That brings back childhood memories. That brings back memories of, I mentioned the Knicks and the Pacers earlier, of Reggie Miller knocking down those threes in the playoffs against the Knicks. It reminds me of when the Bulls and the Cavaliers were facing each other in the playoffs. It reminds me of so many wonderful memories of growing up as a basketball fan. And it pleases me to no end to see that NBC is at least at the table, if for no other reason than to see if that theme returns, because I miss it so much. I would pay whatever ransom Comcast or Cox Cable or any television provider would be willing to force me to, just to watch the NBA on NBC again if they brought that theme back. If they brought back some generic theme, then fuck you, I'm not interested. Just give me Round Ball Rock. Give the people what they want, please. Now, the reason I bring that up is the scuttlebutt around the league for the last 2 years has been expansion's practically set. Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, has practically already decided it's going to expand to 32 teams. I mean, it's practically a done deal. And if it's a done deal, then we already know who the 2 towns are going to be that are getting an NBA expansion team. Las Vegas, obviously, because Las Vegas is getting everything these days. And Seattle. Speaking of good, fun childhood memories. Memories of the Utah Jazz against the Seattle Supersonics. Particularly in the playoffs. Yeah. I loathed the Sonics back in the day with a passion. But I also respected them. I respected Gary Payton. I respected Sean Kemp. I respected Detlef Schrempf and George Karl and all those guys from the Seattle Supersonics. And to see what the NBA did to them back in, I think it was like 2007, was fucking cruel. The town of Seattle did not deserve that. And if the rumors are true that Seattle's practically a lock for an expansion team, number one, it's the right call. Just the right call. And number two, I will probably have a newfound respect and, on some level, admiration, if for nothing else, for the fan base there, for the Seattle Supersonics. Now, how this ties into super teams and whatnot, keep in mind, each team has 15 open roster spots that it needs to keep filled throughout the season. And the more spots that are open, obviously, the more opportunities there are going to be for players to go and make a name for themselves and make money for themselves. So you're going to have a Kevin Durant. You're going to have a Kyrie Irving. You're going to have some of these players going to these expansion teams, and that's going to dwindle down the amount of superstars that are available for everybody else. So it's important for teams going forward to get it into their mental thinking of how to build a team the right way. I know that's a convoluted statement, the right way, but it's the truth. We're seeing it with the playoffs right now. Oklahoma City. Outside of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, can anyone name anybody, any casual fan, name anybody that's playing for the Thunder right now? Outside of Shy Guy. I'm willing to bet no. Denver. Everybody likes to complain about how Denver's boring, which is a crap excuse. But basically, that's their way of saying they don't have any superstars. Again, bullshit, but we'll leave that alone. Minnesota's only starting to get into the casual fan vision, and it's all because of Anthony Edwards. Karl Anthony Towns, fringe superstar. Rudy Gobert, he's better as a number 3 option, to be perfectly honest. Indiana, can anyone name anyone on that team outside of Pascal Siakam and Tyrese Halliburton? Anyone? I mean, I'm not a casual fan, and even I don't think I can name a single player outside of those two on the Pacers. The Knicks, I mean, granted, how many years has James Dolan been trying to land superstar after superstar after superstar after superstar after superstar and failed every single time? And to his credit, he's now shifted his mindset. And I never thought I'd be saying this about James Dolan. But he shifted his mindset from, I need to land a Kevin Durant. I need to land a LeBron James. I need to land a Kyrie Irving. I need to land this guy, this guy, this guy. There was rumors that they were very close to landing Donovan Mitchell. He shifted his mindset from that to, okay, I can't land any superstars, so I'll just make my own. And that's what teams need to start thinking about. There is a very startling, very alarming, not alarming as in, the sky is falling or anything like that, just alarming as in it took me by surprise when I first heard about it. A stat that's going around, and I actually had to, let me see if I can find the thing here. Yeah, here we go. In the NBA playoffs, there's been one of 3 constants, and in a lot of cases, all 3. And that is, the following players have almost always been a part of the NBA playoffs, particularly past the first round. Every single time, except for this year. Those 3 players are Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, and LeBron James. This will be the first year. Keep this stat in mind as you're watching the rest of these playoffs. This is the first time in the NBA playoffs since 2005. 2005. This is the first time that we're witnessing the NBA playoffs from the second round forward without any of those three players that I just mentioned. LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry represent an era. You can love the era, you can hate the era. But you cannot deny the level of excellence that those three players have brought to the NBA. It is a level of excellence that I don't think has been seen since the Magic versus Bird era. And it is about to end. There's a lot of rumor that Klay Thompson is moving on from the Golden State Warriors. And that's going to be the first domino to fall. Once Klay Thompson signs somewhere else, the Warriors are probably going to be trading Draymond Green. If that happens, the rumors are that Steph Curry is probably going to retire. We are witnessing the end of an era in the NBA. Enjoy it now while you can. But also enjoy the era that is about to happen, because it is going to be fantastic. And it is going to take the popularity of the NBA to a completely new level. Guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, guys like Anthony Edwards, guys like Tyrese Halliburton, guys like Tyrese Maxey, who didn't make it past the first round this year, but promise and believe he'll be back. Even guys like Nikola Jokic, who is probably the most humble superstar I've ever seen in my entire life. And that's a compliment, because humility is rare in professional sports. It is beyond rare. We're witnessing something amazing. And I hope that we're not so caught up in old, archaic, antiquated ideas of hoarding superstars on one team to appreciate what we're witnessing. The super team era is dead. Long live the new era. That's all the time I have today, guys. If you are listening to this on Spotify, leave a review. Reviews are open and reviews are awesome. If you're watching this on Facebook, like, share, comment, share with friends, share with family. Yeah, I don't know if I agree with this guy, but he might make a couple of good points. Yeah, maybe. If you're watching this on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. That way you are notified every time a new video drops. If you are interested in donating, donations are open on theclosingtag.com. That is theclosingtag.com. Look for the donate button in the upper right corner and donate as little or as much as you want. You can donate $1, you can donate $10. Anything helps. Anything is happy and good. If you are interested, every Friday going forward, we're going to be recording podcasts on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/owlthegeek. Come watch me record this live. I love watching comments coming in as I'm doing the recording. It's awesome. You might even catch bloopers like my cat meowing in the background. Maybe. Depending on his mood. Anyway, thank you for listening, for watching, for downloading, for donating, for doing everything you can to help support this endeavor. Your efforts are not going unnoticed, so thank you. And until the next time that I drop one of these bad boys, remember to include your closing tags. Thank you. This has been a Galactic Digital Studios production.